You know why I feel like I'm stuck in life? It's because I ain't got an iPad. Like, no, I cracked the code. That's the reason. Like, every time I see somebody who's life together or is at peace in life, they have an iPad. I don't have one.
You probably already know what this video is all about. So when I was doing some light research for this video, I actually came across a few TikToks and I realized that I'm not the only one who feels this way. I don't know why nobody's talking about it. With that being said, I thought that I would sit down and do a little chat about one of my personal biggest purchase regrets in the last year. I've been especially inspired by some of these de-influencing videos. So if you are considering buying an iPad for productivity, I do think that this might be helpful for you. If you already have an iPad and you absolutely love it, this video might not be for you, although I do think that I offer some little nuggets of wisdom just in regards to productivity in general. Overall, I think that the iPad is a really neat, innovative, portable tool that benefits a lot of people, especially if you are a student who prefers handwritten notes or for some reason needs that. But for most of us, especially if you already have a smartphone and a laptop, I really don't think it's necessary. And in this video, I talk a little bit more about why. Now, the reasons that I thought I really needed an iPad probably don't differ too much from the girl in the TikTok that I played earlier. I really truly thought that it would help me be a more organized and productive person. I thought the portability aspect was really appealing. I admittedly was very excited at the potential of coloring on there because doesn't coloring cure depression or something? Looking back, I can only really blame myself because I do think that the reasons pretty much stop there. I was trying to search on Google to see if anyone else felt this way, and I came across a comment on Quora that I really resonated with and I thought it made a lot of sense, and it reads, "I think there are only two reasons why people buy iPads. One, they have been sold on a concept or potential use for an iPad. In that sense, they buy on speculation. Or two, they have one or more specific usages for which they have found an iPad to be better than either a smartphone or a laptop." So as you might guess, I definitely fell into that first category. Within the first few days of getting that iPad, I was enamored and slightly overwhelmed. I downloaded the GoodNotes app and I purchased about $50 worth of templates on Etsy for a weekly planner, just trying to figure out which one worked for me. I spent a lot of time customizing the iPad, setting up my widgets, picking out an aesthetic, perfecting my handwriting, which took like a whole YouTube video of watching how to write on the iPad. I'm not even kidding you. I was like really struggling with writing on that thing, and boy was it exhausting, but I had to go all out because I spent almost $1,000 on this and I really wanted it to work. I realized it was getting a little bit intense when I found myself very frustrated at my handwriting and taking about 5 minutes to write a paragraph because I kept having to redo it or adjust my pen boldness or thickness, which by the way, that pen cost almost an additional $100, I think. Actually, let me double check. It's $130. Keep that in mind. Then I finally would download these templates to my GoodNotes app and I would feel so ready to start planning out my life, but I felt overwhelmed at the smallest little thing. And this could just be me. Again, this is a completely personal experience. I should have clarified that in the beginning. All of this is obviously an extremely personal testimony, but it was such an overstimulating experience. I was wasting time essentially trying to figure out the perfect stickers to add to my page or the perfect highlighter color or the perfect font boldness, which can all just be very distracting for someone like myself. And I understand completely that for many people, it can be really fun to devote some time to making your templates really cute, creative, and aesthetic. But that is just not personally my main goal when it comes to having a productivity system. So now getting into why the iPad did not work for me. Echoing my previous thoughts, I just personally don't want to spend that much time formulating and perfecting my productivity system. I realized over time that I just want a simple system that allows me to optimize my time and feel like I am managing my time and achieving my goals, and that essentially can allow me to live more freely. And I'm also gonna play a TikTok that I think is a little older, but I find it to be really hilarious and relatable.
If you're thinking about getting an iPad, don't. Literally fucking don't. I wanted an iPad so bad. And I was a victim of the era. I was a victim of the era where everybody was like, you know what? You know what? You know what would solve my problems if I got an iPad? Well, guess what? I got the fucking iPad. And guess where it sit? Guess where it sit? Right motherfucking there. Hey, the watch is kind of useless too, but don't get me started on that. We're talking about the iPad. Take the iPad out your cart. Oh my God. Y'all, look what I thought I did with this Apple Pencil, bro. I thought I was eating. Don't do it. You're not an artist. And if you are, go ahead.
I really don't consider myself an artist, and I know that art is subjective, and to an extent we can all be artists, but I'm just not a legitimate artist. And since I don't have the discipline to commit to being an artist, the iPad was obviously never going to give me that discipline. So yes, I got to do some meditative doodling and coloring, but that pretty much stopped after like a month.
What's this?
It's an art project.
Okay, I like it. Picasso.
And now circling back to those templates that I spend about $50 on for my weekly planners, what would then happen? I would be out of my house, I would remember a task or think of something to do, and my iPad would obviously never be accessible because I have no reason to carry around my iPad in my purse. So I would eventually jot it down onto my phone and then have to set a reminder to remember to then transfer it onto my iPad later on, which is literally the most inefficient system. This also applies for calendar events and just jotting down things that I needed around the house or groceries. I found myself still consistently using GCal and my Notes app, and I eventually started thinking, geez, it is so hard to balance all of these systems. And yes, I know that GoodNotes has an app, but I personally did not like using the app, and I didn't like the interface either. I mean, who's doodling on a little iPhone? And if I'm just going to use my phone to type in GoodNotes app, that kind of defeats the entire purpose of buying an iPad to only handwrite things. Mixing in text for some reason just makes me think, like, why not just commit to using one system on my Notes app, because that's what's easier for me. Again, I also know that some people sell templates on GoodNotes that also allow you to link your GCal. So once again, I'm just clarifying, the iPad did not work for me, but there's a lot of people that the iPad would work really well for, especially if you're a student. I know that a lot of med students or students in science and STEM in general really benefit from using the iPad because they need handwritten notes often and prefer free writing their notes. I know that there's like a lot of charts and graphs that are oftentimes drawn out or written. I know that a lot of students in med will also draw out like body parts and anatomy, but the fact of the matter is that I'm not going to carry around my iPad everywhere I go, so it's really not the most efficient place for me to store and access important events and to do things, even if I do work from home. And the main reason for that is because I use my laptop more. In addition to that, anytime that I would feel inspired to pick up my iPad, I would be so disappointed to find that my Apple Pen had drained while just passively sitting there. So I would have to charge my iPad and wait, or just end up using my phone or laptop instead. And get this, Apple actually claims that it's pretty normal for the pen to drain while not in use, so it wasn't any particular issue with my pen. Okay, so I wasn't seeing any consistent improvement with my productivity system. I didn't turn into an artist overnight, shockingly. So the last big and main usage for my iPad was journaling, which I never really had the greatest relationship with anyways. And by that I just mean that I always struggled consistently journaling, especially because I felt like I had to. And if you've watched my other videos, you may or may not know how I feel about journaling and how my relationship with journaling has changed. The main gist of it is that I already deal and struggle a lot with overthinking and anxiety, and so I personally don't benefit from journaling every single day, just because sometimes it can often lead me into a little bit of a negative spiral where I'm just ruminating. I have found it more beneficial to practice gratitude, try to be present, feel out my feelings, and fuel my creativity. I consider myself to be a fairly reflective person, and if I still feel like I have to vent something outside of venting to a friend or venting to my partner in a healthy way, then I will journal about it, which usually ends up being like bi-weekly or monthly. It just stems from a completely personal experience, because I know a lot of people prefer handwriting with journaling, but for me, writing just hurts my hand a lot. I realize that handwriting journaling is not optimal for me to receive the most benefits from journaling. It's really as straightforward as it sounds. Like, when my hand starts to hurt, it prevents me and holds me back from really releasing all of my thoughts and all of my words exactly how I want to articulate them. And obviously I wasn't going to use the iPad keyboard because that shit is so clunky, and obviously I wasn't gonna pay $100 to $200 for an iPad keyboard when I already had a laptop. So do you see where this is going? Also, your girl has really bad sleeping posture, so I have a very sensitive neck and I just really can't spend a lot of time like with my neck down, and the iPad would oftentimes promote that, and I would realize that I just want to be sitting upright whenever I'm having like a productive moment and I'm like doing something. I prefer to be sitting upright with my hands out typing, because if I'm like laying back on my couch or laying down or even just sitting on a table with the iPad flat down, it would just be such an effort for me to not have my neck completely bent while writing on the iPad. Like using it with my neck down for any more than like 30 minutes would be seriously detrimental to my neck. Just a really small thing, but it just added up. Crazily enough, I actually did almost buy a keyboard and I had to stop myself from doing that, which I'm so glad that I did, because the last little cherry on top is really the loss of value when it comes to iPads and a lot of Apple products just in general. A lot of things in life you can invest in with a little bit of peace of mind that you might be able to resell it for a similar enough value later on in life. But as we know, Apple is constantly releasing new products annually, so it's good to consider that the depreciation is significant with the iPad, with some studies claiming that the iPad loses up to 60% in value within the first year, which I do agree with, because I did try to sell it on OfferUp, but once I realized that I wasn't even going to make 50% of what I spent on it, I concluded that it was an even bigger waste of money to sell it, and so I decided to just keep it, and I'll probably use it for movie and TV watching on airplanes and like on camping trips. I'm sure that some other uses will pop up for it, but yeah, that's just where I'm at right now. Thankfully, after that entire experience, I still felt motivated to really narrow down my systems, and I decided to sort of step back and reassess everything. Now, I will say that I would have never gotten to the point of fine-tuning my productivity system if I had not fully accepted that the iPad wasn't going to work for me. I was in a state of denial for a long time, really trying to make it work, and that was holding me back. It was really exhausting trying to make that gadget work for me. The main reason for that is because I personally don't benefit from trying to uphold so many productivity systems. By that, I just mean that for most of my life, I've been using my Notes app and Gcal, and as I've talked about, it was nearly impossible to transfer that system over to my iPad. Then I started YouTube again, which gave me more of a reason to use my laptop, and I realized that I needed a system for planning my YouTube videos. And this is why, like so many other people, my productivity system now consists of just my laptop and my phone, with both housing different responsibilities, which I will get into. Before we jump into my super simple productivity system, I just want to say a few words on the concept of productivity that's heavily inspired by this video, so if you haven't watched this one yet, I would highly recommend it as well. She talks a lot about how our relationship to productivity can oftentimes turn sour, especially when it's constantly stemming like we don't have so many aspects of our life together. And so as humans, we feel inclined to ask ourselves, like, how can we prevent this from happening again? How can we be better? How can I be more productive? So we begin to scour the depths of the internet for more creative systems that might inspire us, and trying to find ways to be more productive in general, potentially creating this cycle where we constantly feel like my life is out of control, so I need to find a solution. But I definitely really resonate with her point that this can oftentimes stem from a very anxious and desperate feeling of needing to constantly get your life back together. And this can personally trap me into wasting my time trying to find more creative ways to be more productive rather than just doing the damn thing. This can manifest in the form of always feeling the need to keep your to-do list full, even if maybe you have nothing to do, or having this anxious sense of urgency to cross something off that list and allowing that to cycle, never quite feeling fulfilled and satisfied with our progress. And more importantly, never taking the time to truly rest, which typically contradicts the reason why so many of us are trying to be more productive, which is to have more time and enjoy life and do things that are more meaningful to you. So with all of that being said, moving forward, I will always opt for the productivity system that is 1, easily accessible, and 2, efficient. All of that other aesthetic stuff can go. As you know by now, I often wasted a little bit too much time spiraling into all the little details. And I know that many of you might not agree with that and you might really love doing that. That's completely okay. We all have different goals, but for me personally, even just like 2 hours a month is a little bit too much annually on like formulating my systems constantly. So now I just use 2 systems, and that is my phone and Notion. Now my phone is mainly for all general life planning things, and I do have 1 full page dedicated to widgets for this, which I find to be really helpful because, as I've mentioned, the easier my system is to access, the better it is for me overall. And I also use my notes app a lot for everyday life things and planning. So my widgets page consists of my GCal on top. I do have my reminders on the middle left of my weekly to-do things, and then I use an app called Tweak for my daily to-do things, which I love this app. I find it to be so simple and minimalistic, and I just love the really easy interface. And then my last widget on the bottom is just an easy way for me to access my Notion, which leads me to my second productivity system, which is Notion. I really never thought that I would get into Notion, and I think that I've narrowed down the reason why. And I know that a lot of people are using Notion as their #1 main productivity system. And again, that just could not work for me because I've been using GCal and my notes app for way too long. This is where I organize larger, grander projects in my life. This is what houses all of my goals, which, if I may say so myself, I think Notion was actually meant to be used this way personally. And I find it to be a lot less overwhelming when I split my systems into 2. Like, my phone has always been my life system, and then Notion is like my bullet journal where I can dream, plan, and have my goals and keep track of my goals. And I also use Notion to journal because, as you know, I do prefer typing. Here's a quick overview of what my current Notion Life Hub page setup looks like. And although I was a little iffy on starting Notion, I have really grown to absolutely love it. And this is just what works for me right now because I do use my laptop a lot, especially for editing. I do feel like if I was a student though, I would still prefer Notion and my phone over having an iPad. My take is one or the other. I really don't think that you need a laptop and an iPad. If you have one, I think you can pass on the other. Now, after writing this video and reflecting on all of this, immediately I understood that I obviously fell into the first category of buying this iPad mainly based on being sold into that idea of it enhancing my life, making me more of a productive and organized person, which is where I think I made the first mistake. It's of course not inherently bad to take a chance and invest in a product that you think will enhance your life creatively and productively, but I will personally never buy a product that expensive without first analyzing how and why I feel like I really need that specific product, or if it's just an emotional hole or a void that I'm trying to fill. And I'm not shaming anyone. I personally love retail therapy, and I fell victim to another large purchase regret earlier this year as well. So it's completely normal. This happens in life. There's nothing I can do about it. I've moved on. I've learned my lesson. I'm not dwelling on it, but I do think that this video might be helpful for someone out there. I think it's good to start the conversation. I really do think that this applies for anything, especially anything expensive that's being marketed on the internet as like super aesthetic or life-changing, to really take some time and think on it, sleep on it, and really meditate and consider if it will actually bring value to your life, or if you can gain that feeling by working with what you have now. Now, although I've obviously been voicing my personal opinions on what my expectations versus reality was with the iPad, I do recognize that it's a very neat and innovative device that can add a lot of value to other people's lives. It's obviously a lot thinner than a laptop. It's a lot more portable. It's great for creative and in-depth note-taking, planning, art, video editing on the go, especially since I know you can't replicate that feeling of pen to paper on many laptops. So please don't let this video deter you from looking into an iPad if you really feel like you need it in your life, if you are a student or if you need it for work. I suggest doing your own research and forming your own opinion. There are so many pro iPad videos out there that really glorify and romanticize the iPad, so I thought that I would contribute a different and alternative opinion, since I know a few of us out there can relate, especially if you are in that vulnerable creative rut as well, where you feel like you need something new and fresh for productivity and organization. As someone who's been through it, I would highly suggest trying to fine-tune what you have now and working with what you have now before spending $1,000. So with all of that being said, if you do relate, if you do resonate with any of the points that I made in this video, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And although I do a lot of lifestyle vlog content, I do plan on posting sit-down talk videos like this because I'm a very opinionated person. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and liking, sharing as well, because it really means the world to me right now. And I will see you next time.